morning, all. I hope you're having a great start to your day. I think I've met the vast majority of you, but for those I haven't, my name is Mr. Prince, and I am the Dean of Multicultural Education here at Taft. My role here at the school is to help us think about the work that we do around issues of diversity, equity, and inclusivity. Or as I like to think about it, help us think about how we ensure that all people feel welcomed, wanted, and at home here on campus. And I'm here this morning to talk to you about two documents, or one revision to a document that members of the faculty undertook last year. The first is a new diversity statement or commitment that was written by a group of committees, last year, and revisions to the Portrait of the Graduate, which is a document that I think you all are probably a little bit more familiar with. So first, these are the committees of folks that undertook this work. They met once a week for over 2 months at the end of last year, and I think that we should take some time to acknowledge them as they have done some good stuff that I think will help to guide the work that we do moving forward. Yeah, please. So first, the revised tenets of the Portrait of the Graduate. So the Portrait of the Graduate is a set of tenets that we hope you all will embody after your time here at Taft. I've written the preamble up here on the slide, and you can read that, but I want to focus on that second sentence. More particularly, Taft graduates have exhibited that they will do the following things in their list of 12 tenets. Mr. Wilson and Mr. Tellis led a committee to revise the two tenets that you see on the left here and change them into the two tenets that you see on the right. So I'll give you a minute just to read those really quickly. So in thinking about the work that we do around diversity, equity, and inclusivity, and the principles that we want you all to embody around diversity, equity, and inclusivity, once you've graduated, there were a couple different focal points for these revisions. For the first tenet that you see up there, one of the first goals was to shorten that tenet, take it from 2 sentences into 1. The second was to focus on the community building aspect of that tenet. And you can see that in those words that when you graduate here, we want you to be in a position where you can help to create compassionate, inclusive, and socially just communities wherever you go beyond Taft's walls. The focus with the second tenet was to make it more active rather than simply valuing diversity, which can seem a little distant, a little passive, as though we're standing back and just looking. We are actively, authentically, and empathetically engaging with diversity and diverse peoples around us. And we feel confident that if you all are doing these things by the time you leave Taft, we will have done our job insofar as diversity, equity, and inclusivity here on campus. So if this is what we want you to eventually embody, the diversity statement is the way that we think that you will get there. So I'm going to give you a run through of the diversity statement because I'm sure that you've seen it around, but you may not have taken the time to thoroughly read it. And I'm going to apologize to lower mids and new mids. This will be based on a presentation I did in iBlock. But as Mr. Wilson is fond of saying and presenting, deep and enduring learning happens recursively. And actually, if you look at the previous slide, this is a slide that he put together because you can see the color coding as well. All the love in the world to Mr. Wilson. He's my mentor. Mr. Wilson! Okay, so here is the Taft Diversity, Equity, and Inclusivity Statement. Again, you may well have interacted with it at to this point in the school year, but I want to give you some time to give it a read. If it's the first time or if it's the second time, again, recursive learning is important. So go ahead and give it a read. Okay, so there's a lot there, and I just want to walk you through a few of the sentences that I think are most important. These are not the most important by any stretch. You might disagree, you might think other things are important, but this is what I've chosen to focus on today. The first is this idea that Taft is an intentionally diverse institution. We are an intentionally diverse place. We are a school comprised of students from 33 different states, 44 different countries, speaking as best I can count 16 different languages, and with any number of different races, ethnicities, nationalities, religions, ages, sexual orientations, gender identities, and levels of ability. And if you think about that and think about all the different intersections of those identities that happen in each and every one of you in different ways, that is incredibly unique and complex. Now, I'm sure that if Mr. Frew at the admissions office wanted a relatively homogeneous population, a group of folks who are more or less the same in a number of ways, they could do that. They could put that school together. They could have that student body. But instead, they've chosen us, you, and all the things that make you unique. And that is a part of who we are as a school. So we are an intentionally diverse place. The second thing I want to focus on is this idea that the work that we do around diversity, equity, and inclusivity is both done for moral and pragmatic reasons. I think we could all agree that it is morally right that folks ought to have access to a quality education like the one that you get at Taft, and that when they are here, they feel as though they belong. You all deserve to feel as though you belong here at this school. But there is a value in addition to that, insofar as your practical experience beyond these walls. By the time you enter the workforce, I guarantee you the world will be smaller, not bigger than it is today. You will be working with people from across the globe who have a number of different perspectives and backgrounds that you will need to know how to engage with. If we as a school have not prepared you to do that, we have failed. We have not done our job. And not only might you struggle in your work environment if you aren't prepared to work with different people, your business, your profession might struggle as well. I've compiled a list of headlines from any number of different articles. This was just from a Google search about diversity and success. But the science shows us, that the research shows us that diverse places, diverse workplaces, and in any different field do better on the whole. Your workplace will be more successful the more different people from different backgrounds with different perspectives you have in it, and the more they feel like they belong in that place. So while this is a moral calling, it's morally the right thing to do, it is practical, it's pragmatic, it's something you need to do to be successful moving forward. While at Taft and beyond, community members commit to affirm and honor the lived experiences of others. This is one that I know can be a sticking point because people worry about affirm and honor. And one thing I want to point out is affirm and honor does not mean agree with. When I did this presentation to lower mids and mids, I used a kind of silly example. They laughed at it, so if it falls, you can blame them. But for the longest time, I didn't like wearing sandals. All right? I didn't think they were comfortable. I didn't think they offered enough support. I didn't think there was great support from my arches. I just didn't like them. That was my lived experience. And it informed my decision not to wear sandals. And while that's me, it seems foolish. I would have had a hard time going to somebody else and saying, well, my lived experience is that sandals are no good. You shouldn't wear them. Now, I might disagree with someone about their choice to wear sandals. We might have a conversation about whether or not sandals are great footwear or not. But in the end, I cannot tell them that their lived experience doesn't suggest that sandals are good footwear. And that's a silly example, but imagine a conversation along those lines about religion. I might have grown up in a particular religious faith that has taught me certain things. I might disagree with you and the things that you have been taught by your religion. But in the end, the way that you got there, the life experiences that you've had, how you've grown up in that church or that synagogue, that mosque, that place of prayer, is yours, and I cannot discount that. Next, while we're here, we will willingly challenge inherited beliefs and ideologies. To stick with that sandals idea, a couple years ago I was at a wedding on a beach. The groom wanted us all to wear sandals. I refused. I wasn't going to buy any, but my fiance, in all of her wisdom, and I hope she sees this later, in all of her wisdom, bought me actually a pretty comfortable pair of sandals that I now wear all the time. I think they're great. They've got the arch support I like. They don't make that flip-flop sound that annoys the hell out of me. They're really great. And had I not been confronted with these great sandals, had I not willingly challenged, or not so willingly challenged, my inherited beliefs and ideologies about sandals, I might never have worn them. And again, I know sandals are a silly example, but imagine a conversation about religion in which you talk with somebody else, you challenge an inherited belief or ideology of yours, and find something new that you believe in that can inform the way that you live your life. How profoundly might that change you as a person, the way you interact with others? So that is a part of what we're asking you to do. And finally, what I think might be most important is that we commit to doing this work. As such, community members commit to participate in and support ongoing equity and inclusion programming. This is not something we do on the side. This is not something extra. This is not something we do when it's convenient. This is not an add-on. It's not optional. This is who we are as a community. It's implied in our mission. It's implied in our motto. It's not always going to be easy. It's not always going to be convenient, but it's what we must do. It's what you've committed to do by being here on campus, by being a member of this community. And I don't know that I can emphasize that enough. Now, I know that's a lot. Take a deep breath. It's okay. It's grandiose language, it's high ideals, and that's challenging and daunting. But I want to show you, present to you some of the ways in which community members are currently actioning this statement. And it starts at the very highest levels of the school. Last week, the Board of Trustees was here. They had their fall meeting. And at that fall meeting, members of the board committed to do two things. First, to attend the People of Color Conference, which will be held in Nashville in a couple months. And second, to read the book Waking Up White, which a number of faculty members read last year. Both of these commitments with the idea that these members of the board would take a look at who they are, challenge their inherited beliefs and ideologies, be open to other perspectives and ideas. School administrators have committed to creating a diversity, equity, and inclusivity dashboard, a set of longitudinal data that we can look at over the years to see how we are doing as a school insofar as our work around diversity, equity, and inclusivity. Various members of the faculty have undertaken any number of different initiatives in this vein. I'll speak from my perspective. The history department at the end of last year looked at our primary sources. We looked at who was and was not represented in those primary sources to make sure that we could represent the perspectives and backgrounds of different folks. And earlier this year, dorm monitors committed to do any number of different things in the dorms. The two most common ones I put up here for you. Calling people out when they microaggress, which is super challenging and awkward and difficult. And yet I know they're doing that good work. And getting to know people of different backgrounds, different perspectives that they might not interact with as a part of their normal day-to-day. So, one of the bits of feedback I've gotten on my presentations in the last year is that I have not given folks practical steps, practical next steps for how they can action these principles. And that's something I'm hoping to address today. So what can you do to action this diversity commitment? It starts with looking inward. It starts with looking inward. If you look at, not Kerry Washington, but the steps that the board, school administrators, and the history department are taking, those are all introspective. We are considering our current practices, trying to identify deficiencies and do better. And that's where I suggest you start. These are considered by some to be the core identifiers. Start by asking yourself how you identify along each of these different lines. If you don't have an answer for one of those identifiers, that might be an identifier to explore. If you have an answer for each of these identifiers, you might consider which one you might not understand particularly well. I guarantee you, for all of us in this room, there is one of these identifiers that we could know more about. And once you've picked that identifier, learn about it and talk about it. I've used the example of gender identity up here. And while there are any number of resources in the library, I have any number of resources. At a minimum, Google it. Use the internet, use your laptop, use your phone, do a Google search. I did a Google search of gender identity. And just clicking, I think, on the first 5 links, this is some of the information I got. Gender identity is one's innermost concept of self as male, female, some blend of both or neither. It is different from sexual orientation, and I have the definition of sexual orientation up there. Gender identities are on a spectrum that are based on a complex interrelation of body, identity, and expression. People can and do undergo gender identity transitions, and that there are intricate features of gender identity that we all need to pay attention to. For example, pronouns. People choose to use non-gender conforming pronouns. And that's just the first 5 searches. So once you've done that inner work, once you've identified an area for needed improvement, once you've started to build your understanding, your capacity, your language, the next step is to enter into conversation, and there are plenty of opportunities to do that. They'll come up in classes, they'll come up around lunch tables, they'll come up with your friends. Seek people out. Come talk to me. I'm happy to talk about this stuff anytime. But a key thing that you must do is enter into conversation. And know that despite your best efforts and intentions, you are going to make mistakes. It is going to happen, I guarantee it. And it will be uncomfortable, you won't like it, you might want to withdraw, you might need to withdraw for a little bit. But the best thing we can do is take the feedback that we get from others and try to do better the next time. So I know this was a lot of information. I hope that if you have questions, and I'm sure you do, that you'll reach out to adults in the community and others. I thank you for your attention today, and most importantly, I thank you for the work that you're going to do moving forward. This is uncomfortable, it's challenging, it's difficult, but as is the case with most things in life, the uncomfortable, challenging, and difficult things are often those that are most worthwhile. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.